somehow when you talk about progressive resistance and we need to get stronger, and then you end up with freaking grandma in the powerlifting meet, right? Like we can't navigate the middle ground really well in our field. We say, oh, you should run a marathon. Like, how did we go from you need to be in shape to you should run a marathon? How did we go from you should get stronger to grandma deadlifts, right? It's like we just don't negotiate the middle ground well.
Yeah. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 402 of the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation at performbetter.com. I'm your host, Anthony Renna. Today we have on Coach Boyle. As you know, we alternate weeks. So what are we talking about? We're going to talk about his topics at both the MBSC spring seminar in Woburn at MBSC next weekend, April 12th and 13th. Interesting what he's doing there. He's doing 3 different kind of short talks, 3 kind of TED Talk style ones, and we'll talk more about that. And his topic at Perform Better this year in August, he's going to be in Providence for the Functional Training Summit. So we'll talk all about that. We had an interesting discussion on the strengthcoach.com forum. I want to get his take on. It was about the correlation between single leg squats, front squats, and speed. So there's a guy training his son, all the unilateral stuff, and a lot of the kids are doing front squats, and they happen to be faster than him. So we're going to talk about how to approach that. And the kid, he's feeling like he needs to be doing some heavy front squats, and his dad wants to know how to approach it. So it was an interesting discussion about that. We'll also talk to Coach Boyle about why he's gotten away from some of the half kneeling and lunge position medicine ball throws in his progression in favor of the more standing progressions. So I mentioned Coach Boyle at the summit this year in Providence, August 14th to 16th. They've also, they're going to be in Chicago, not Coach Boyle, but the summit is going to be in Chicago, June 12th to 14th. I'll be there. I'll be hanging out. So if you're coming, shoot me an email or make sure you come up and say hi. It's going to be a great weekend. They're at Long Beach, July 17th to 19th. So this year, similar to last year, they're doing they're opening on Thursday in the afternoon, but this year they're doing all business talks in the afternoon on Thursday. And then Friday and Saturday will be the lectures and the practicals, with the social on Friday night. As usual, my man Kevin Hirchin will be on guitar. And then last year, Chris introduced a 5th piece to so there's usually 2 practicals and 2 summits. 2 practicals and 2 lectures. And now there's a networking room. So there's going to be 2 or 3 presenters in that room during that time. You can go hang out with them and network with them, or, ask them questions, whatever you want to do. So, and it's pretty low key. So you go in, you can hang with them for that hour and 15. So it's something that Chris found was, got a lot of good feedback from, and decided to do it again. So, no Sunday, lots of new speakers. So you guys, you can check it all out. And actually, they're having a really cool special. Get one right now. And I don't know how long this is going to last. Get one now, and you can bring a friend. So, and if you register 6 weeks before, which right now is 6 weeks before Chicago, but 6 weeks before, there's the early bird special. So you get a special pricing, and you can bring a friend. Check it all out at performbetter.com. Guys, lots to get to. Let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, guys, now it's time for the strengthcoach.com and MBSC.TV Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle, strengthcoach.com, articles, videos, and one of the longest running forums. It's probably the longest running forum in strength and conditioning and fitness. You can try strengthcoach.com out for 7 days for free. Go to strengthcoach.com and start your free trial. MBSC.TV as well. You're basically a fly on the wall at MBSC, staff meetings, programs, seminars, and in-services from top coaches. You can try it out for 7 days as well for free, MBSC.TV. They also show, usually you can go to some of the past ones, the MBSC seminars. This year, the spring seminar is upon us, April 12th and 13th in Woburn, home of MBSC. Coach Boyle it looks like he's speaking TBD, trap bar deadlift, I guess. That's what you're talking about, right? Mike, what do you, it's on the website, TBD. What do you got? What are you speaking about? Or do you even know?
I do know, actually. So basically, um, initially, I talked, actually, I think I'd mentioned to you that Jenny from Magnitude had mentioned sort of like what ended up in my mind being kind of a state of the industry talk, like, okay, where are we now? And then, but we had a really good communications talk that was part of our staff meeting maybe 3 weeks ago. And a couple of people at the staff meeting said that would be really good for the seminar because we were just talking about sort of how we interact with each other and kind of how to get your point across. And then I had wanted to do the digestion one that I had talked to you about, kind of the fourth system idea. And I was kind of like, oh, what am I going to do? So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do 3 20-minute TED Talks. That's the way I'm going to
Oh,
frame it in terms of I'm going to do the 20-minute one on digestion. So I'll do 20 slides on digestion. I'll do 20 slides on communication, and then I'll finish with 20, kind of the 20 state of the industry slides. So that way I can get all the stuff in that I want to get in. Still, I guess people, it doesn't matter. I was going to say give the people what they want, but that's really not what you're doing anyway, in the sense of I'm talking about what I want to talk about, but
yeah.
I just have a bunch of stuff that I think is pertinent at this particular point in time. And it kind of is all over the place. So rather than try to figure out, hey, can I meld this into one talk? I'm just going to say, hey, this is going to be sort of TED Talk format. I'm going to do 20 minutes and then I'm going to stop and tell you, okay, that's the end of that one. If you got questions, write them down. And then I'm going to do 20 minutes. And when that's done, I'm going to tell you, and you get questions, write them down. And then I'll finish with 20 minutes here. And then, because we've got, Kevin said, I was thinking we had an hour, but I have 75 minutes. So, that even if I can keep them all to 20, that'll give us kind of a 15-minute Q&A at the end, which will let people explore, I guess, whichever one of those they want to.
Very cool. Yeah, that was my next question. Was it all in succession? So you have some good guests, Pete Dupuy, also talking about the trap bar deadlift. Vinny Toludo doing training during pregnancy. You have David Gray there. That's pretty exciting. Lower body basics. That's a lecture on practical, and you're going to do a Q&A. You'll have your post-seminar social at Lord Hobo again. Kevin is going to lead off Sunday with conditioning from heart health to performance. Jess Tolman, who I'm most likely will have on in the next couple months, and we'll probably talk about this MBSC adult program design. If she listens to this, she'll realize, oh, maybe that was an invitation to come on because I haven't talked to her about it yet. And Ben Connolly, deep dive into single leg training, which would have been a good segue, but I really, I have a question about single leg training, but I want to ask you about Perform Better just announced their summit, and you're going to be talking about the training the adult population, right? Or for personal trainers. Mike, just give us like a 35,000 foot like overview of what's the big rocks here that you're looking at for training, adults for personal trainers.
Well, it's really interesting. More and more, I'm reading. I think I told you I'm reading Gabrielle Lyon's book right now on called Forever Strong, and I think it's more of the same in terms of, hey, get strong and get in shape. But I think we've got to keep reframing it and keep beating that drum for the personal training client that's out there, because I think sometimes we can get too functional, and I may sometimes I always think I'm creating slides in my head sometimes as I talk to you, but sometimes people are, they're just not lifting weights, right? And so, and then the zone 2 thing, right? We end up, I mean, okay, everybody's worried about, how many minutes of zone 2 you're getting, but if you're not doing the hard stuff, kind of, you go back to the Andy Galpin idea, if you're not really revving the engine, then you're probably not doing what you need to do, because it's really VO2 max. If they're not talking about cardiovascular fitness as much as they're talking about VO2 max. And VO2 max, particularly in the trying to think of the word, I guess the less experienced user is going to rise much faster through interval training. So and then it's kind of going back to the recipe idea, because I think I haven't done that talk in a while, and I think particularly at Perform Better, you end up in a situation where
They turn over the client.
yeah, they turn over,
turns over.
exactly. So you think, oh, I just did this, but I probably haven't done program design at Perform Better in 6 or 7 years, where we've really sat down and said, hey, this is this is how we design a program. And it'll be interesting to see Jess's talk, because I would think Jess was showing me her slides from the MBSC winter seminar, and it's probably going to be very similar to that in terms of just looking at people and saying, okay, here's the categories. How do you fill in the blanks of these categories? If we're looking at power, we were talking about that today in terms of, in reference to our adult program. How are we going to approach power with our adult program? How are we going to approach knee dominant strength? How are we going to approach hip dominant strength? How are we going to approach pushing? How are we going to approach pulling? Because it's not the same with the adults as it is as with kids. It's easy. Kids, I think sometimes we can just look at this and say, let's do hang cleans, let's do this, let's do that. You can't do that with the adults. With the adults, you've got to really be way more thoughtful. You've got to be able to look at this and say, okay, yes, I know I want to get this quantity. It's like why we don't squat, right? I mean, well, obviously, we don't squat with anybody, but if I'm looking at an adult and I'm thinking, hey, it's really important for them to get strong, do I really want them to get strong in the back squat, or do I want them to get strong in the split squat? And just trying to kind of hit on all those points again.
I guess I didn't want to say the joke. You haven't done program design ever, because that was our joke. Because I always complained to you in all of your lectures over 20 years that I've been seeing you, is like,
But I
Mike,
have done some that I've called program design,
yes,
where
you
I've
never got
never really got to program design.
never got
I
there. I
did at
mean,
least try to do it.
Mike, let's now segue to the single. I thought this was super interesting question, because we always talk about the good stuff, right? Single leg squat versus bilateral squat. There's a guy, I don't even know if he's a trainer. He's sounds like he might be a trainer, but he says he has his son doing single leg squat, right? So he's bought in. The dad's bought in. Better than bilateral squat. Okay. But the team, they're all doing front squat or other bilateral squats. And the kid thinks that because they're stronger, that they're faster than him, because they're stronger in the front squat, that they're faster than him. For that reason. And he was feeling like, look, they can lift more weight in the front squat because they're doing it. And then, so they're overtaking him at the end of the race, right? 50 meters in the field. And he says, he can take the lead, but in the last meters, some of them overtake him. So he trains them on the fly 10. And he's always done plyos and single leg split squats, etc., trap bar, single leg deadlift. So I thought it was great. He just wanted advice, like, how do I speak to my son about this? Because it's hard. Like, how do you argue with that? These are kids. You must come across this once in a while, Mike. Talk to us about this.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, and I didn't think about this. I looked at that this morning, and I kind of wrote the response that I wrote in terms of, I think he's already given him the right answer. The problem is when you're dealing with, let's just say his son's 15 years old, his son didn't get the answer that he wants, so it's not the right answer. And the reality is, if his son is winning in the beginning of the race, then he does have enough strength, because the beginning of the race is going to be more of an acceleration dominant portion of the race, which is going to go to the stronger person, right? So, and again, I'm writing my notes here. Now I'm going to go back to the forum and write this in here. But
I always create a little more work for you.
yeah, you always do. So I'm going to write now right here. Start goes to the stronger. And so the problem is, how do you explain that to a kid who's just looking at the result and saying, "Hey, they're squatting more than me and they're beating me in the race." It's the old correlation versus causation idea, right? That's not why they're beating you in the race. You're looking at the kid and thinking, you're just not faster than them. Like this is not a training related question. The fact that you're losing a race to somebody, you can look at it and you could draw any correlation that you wanted and say, well, they're better at X than me, and that's why I'm losing the race. The reality is the science probably doesn't support that, but that doesn't help us when we're talking to a 15-year-old boy. So I don't know what the right answer is in terms of how do I sell that to a kid? How do I get a kid to understand that actually those guys may have been way faster than you and now you're in the race,
Good
right?
point. Good point.
Um, Now it would be different if he had said, "We've been racing since we were 10 and I always beat them and now they're doing front squats and they're beating me." Then I would say, "Ooh, that's a really tough sell." But
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case. So, I think you just gotta sometimes that's when you get into, I guess, maybe the trust the process talk where
Mike, I also wondered right away, nobody asked him this, but is he timing those flying tens? Because he said he was doing them. It doesn't mean he's timing them because I did them too with clients before, but I don't have the timing system. So great. That's really the difference. That's something you've talked about for the last
yeah.
bunch of years. Are you timing? Are you timing? Are you timing? So yeah, he could be doing flying tens, but also you were talking about a 50-meter race here, right? So could that be part of it too? If the kid's not, I mean, there's got to be some rehearsal of that. There's got to be some, do the test, practice the test to get better on the test.
Yeah, I thought, but it's interesting. I love the fact though that we're getting those types of questions on the forum, particularly because that's a guy, not English is not his first language, and so to realize that okay, we're having some impact on on coaches who are working with soccer, and I don't know what country they're in, but he's trying to implement this philosophy, and I think that's where it's tough when you look at it and say, "Wow, it's not working," but I mean, the reality of the situation is it's not like you're just going to out train everybody. We had this conversation. I had this exact conversation in the staff meeting the other day. We had a kid, James Souter, who played for us at BU. James Souter was probably the purest fast twitch guy I ever saw in Boston University history. He was like a 5'10", 200-pound linebacker who actually I think he played at least in some NFL exhibition games. I can't remember if he actually ended up playing in an NFL regular season game, but he got to NFL camp as an extremely undersized linebacker. But he was 100% fast twitch fiber, and it would drive guys crazy because they would look and think, I work so much harder, than Souter. And, Souter comes in and I was just like you didn't want to be able to say to some kids, Souter is a superior being. He is the epitome of what fast twitch fiber is supposed to look like. I still remember one time we're doing squat testing, and generally I used to tell guys, expect to get 10 to 15 pounds over what you get for three. So if you got 450 for three, you're going to squat 465, 470. James would squat 450 for three, and he would blast up 500. Boom. And everybody would just look and go, what the hell? Like he just did 465 for three last
Yeah.
week, and it didn't look that easy. And it was kind of like, yeah, but he's the purest outlier that you're going to see. So trying to explain to kids that there's some genetics at play here is really hard. Trying to figure out
Yeah.
we had a quarterback. I won't mention his name. I loved this kid because mentioning his name will Souter. It's complimentary. This other kid, it's not. This kid was extremely, extremely average athletically, and he would come to me all the time, just shaking his head and say, I don't understand. This isn't working. And I just wanted to look at him and think, you probably should have been like running the mile somewhere, right? Like you're just not genetically geared to this game, and you're working, you're doing everything I ask you to do. You're working your ass off, but I can't wish you to be stronger. And then I got these other guys on the other side of the spectrum. This, like I said, a guy like James, who was literally, I mean, as probably as purely fast twitch as any human could be, would have been probably an Olympic sprinter had he decided that was what he wanted to pursue. And he would just get so much more out of so much less than what this guy would get. But that's the reality of this sort of genetic lottery that you're involved in. I jokingly said at the staff meeting, hey, you got to say to some of these kids, just go pick better parents. And that's the reality of the situation that we're looking at. It's not fair.
Yeah.
Training result is not fair, and it favors the gifted.
But also, and again, this stuck out to me when I was reading it was All right, it's a race in practice, and I'm gonna go by what like you or Coach Parker are gonna talk about. Like, and you've talked about this before. Hey, some of the best athletic guys in the gym, obviously, they're not your best players. So I'd like to know what is happening with this kid on the field because 50 meters is a long time in soccer. That it doesn't really happen like that. It's a lot. It's a much shorter sprint, mostly. Does it
Yep.
happen once in a while? Probably does a little bit when they're flying down the wing, I guess. But it's not 50 meters most of the time. So I wonder how this translates to the game, and
Well,
if
that's another good question. It would be interesting in the thread in terms of is sometimes you have to go back and say, is he getting better? Is he performing better on the field? Because ultimately, that's the test. The game isn't about necessarily who wins that 50-meter race, although there may be, because again, I mean, you're right. In a soccer game, I mean, 50 meters, you're talking about someone really would have to drive a ball really far, and you would have to really chase that ball down hard for that 50-meter race to make a difference. Much more of it, I would think, even a long run. I'm going to say 20 meters is probably a long run in soccer, but you're right. I think some of it is he getting better? But as I said, I think it goes back, and that's what I wrote in my notes, the trust the process part, looking at this and saying, it you can't just it's like you can't wish for grass, right? Like you can't look out there and realize, I didn't put any seed out, I didn't put any water out, but damn, I'm just wishing for grass to pop up. And then you think, nah, probably if you wanted grass to pop up, you needed to get some grass seed out there about 6 weeks ago and a sprinkler and make sure that it was getting sprinkled. So you've got to realize that this process of growing the lawn per se might take years as opposed to days or weeks or months or whatever it is. And that if you are really consistent, you may find yourself beating those kids. Because I always go back to my son Mark, but I mean, over time, I mean, when he started out, he was the slowest. I don't think there was a slower kid on his team. The first time we did fly tens, there was not a slower kid than him on his team. Now his college team, I think there are 3 or 4 kids who are faster than him out of whatever it is, 44. And a lot of that is just simply a credit to trusting the process, continuing to do sprints and to do the work, to do the stuff. So it's not there is no kind of instant gratification situation here where you think, hey, I've been doing this for a couple of months and hey, I should be faster than everybody. Yeah, and then you factor in, okay, where is this kid genetically? Is this kid's probably not Cristiano Ronaldo, right? He's probably not Daniel Sturridge. He's probably not one of these guys who's was born naturally fast. So
Yeah. It's funny. This is not it's gonna be hard to talk to a 15-year-old about this, but I was listening to the Hal Elrod book, a miracle equation. And what he was saying, I thought this was a great quote for goals. It's not about achieving the goal. It's the person you become trying to achieve the goal. Right. So the more consistency, and we're having like a 60-day challenge. And so at the gym. And so I've gotten a bunch of clients to do it, and it's very habit based. So at the end of the day, even if anybody doesn't lose weight or gain some muscle, whatever, some of them are now like one of the habits is drinking more water, half your body weight in ounces, right? Another one is getting 7+ hours of sleep. Another one is adding more protein to your meals. I hope after the 60 days, if those are the things that they start to do, then maybe after 90 or 120, then now we're taught that's the person that they're going to become, the habits that they're going to have. So hard to talk to a 15-year-old about that piece of it, but because it's not very sexy, it's people want results right away.
exactly, yeah, that's everybody, right? I mean, that's the good thing is I think we're getting past that a little bit in the mainstream fitness industry, a little
Yeah.
bit more because and that's where I think the uh the emphasis because I reposted, I don't know if you saw my Instagram story, I reposted the Peter Attia thing where he basically said if you look at all cause mortality, two things move the needle more than smoking, more than all these other things, and that's being strong and being fit.
Yep.
And so you start looking at this, and it was funny because I was talking to Joe Squiz today, who I ride the bike with. He said, when you look at that Atia thing, you realize we're doing more good than I thought we were
Ooh.
by getting people to consistently lift weights and by getting people to consistently get on the bike. And that's why what we find is it's really easy to get people to lift. It's not as easy to get them to lift heavier. So you're getting them to, I always talk about sort of engaging in the progressive resistance process, right?
Yeah.
Finding a way. And that's why we talk about, like in my book, the body weight progression idea, do 8 split squats, do 10 split squats, do 12 split squats, then grab a dumbbell, because you want to engage in that process of progressive resistance, and then getting them to actually push themselves from and I hate the word aerobic, but from a conditioning standpoint, getting them to push themselves, getting them to say, hey, I got on there and I worked hard to do that without killing them, because that's the other part. And we were actually having that discussion about our Thrive program. And Jess was talking about it because Jess has been working with Bruce Mack, and they're trying to figure out sort of some harder cardiovascular stuff to do. And I started thinking that's good, except if you do something too hard, you kind of poison the well, because now you get someone who thinks, oh my God, I tried, let's just say we do 0.1 sprints, and I tell you, I want you to try to hit 90 RPMs. You're going to do one or two of those and you might throw up, the average,
Yeah.
right? So then you've kind of poisoned the well. They think, oh my God, this bike sucks. This is
Yeah.
awful. I'm dying. So we're always trying to figure out, I always think it's kind of like baiting the hook and then getting the hook in and then slowly reeling them in, as opposed to yanking it to the point where you rip the hook out. But then getting them to progressively try to go harder. And it was interesting. A bunch of the staff people went out and did a 2 mile today without us telling them to. Usually we have to kind of do a staff 2 mile every year, every once or twice during the year to try to get people to do it. And they did it on their own. So I thought, hey, that's really good. And that's our staff, not
Yeah.
our clients. But sometimes, so we're trying to find, right? We always talk about kind of the Goldilocks progressive resistance formula, the Goldilocks interval formula, where we can get people to engage in the process, but not kind of poison the well, not be in a situation where, I try, I went up and I'm crippled. I went up, I can't move because you told me to add more weight and now I'm a robot. Or you told me to push harder on the bike and I threw up. And I've been doing it. My buddy Eric and I have been training him for about a year, one of my good friends. And I've been doing that with him. I mean, when we started out, we'd get on the bike and we'd do 10-20s, just 10 on, 20 off, 10 on, 20 off. And his heart rate would elevate so high so the way the assault bike is set up, it's 8, 10, 20s. Is 8 is, with a set. But I'd have to have him skip too. Like sometimes we'd get to 4 and I'd be like, okay, just keep resting through 5 and 6 and do 7 and 8. And then we got to the point where we could do 8 consistently. But now, I mean, the other day he and I did a ladder down like 0.7, 0.6, 0.5, 0.4, down to 0.1, and he did really well. But it's been a year of
Yeah.
slow reeling, right? Slow reeling, bringing him in, bringing him in, bringing him in, not yanking so you lose them.
Yeah. No, I
Or
agree.
fishing analogy. How's that for? Huh?
There you go.
I'm usually using cooking analogies. Now I've moved to fishing analogies. Two things,
I
two things that I can't do. I can't cook and I can't fish,
there you go.
but I can
And
use analogies.
as we see the water behind you, and you're right though. It took me. It's a similar thing. Super heavy weights is to strength training as that high intensity for the adult population. You can poison the well with too much and ruin it. It took me 6 months with my group of 3 people that basically we started doing once a week, getting super hard on the bike. So and now they love it. Right. So I didn't just throw it to them right away.
Right. And that's what we end up with. It's funny. I just wrote another note in my thing for my presentation. Somehow when you talk about progressive resistance and we need to get stronger, and then you end up with freaking grandma in the powerlifting meet, right? Like it's, we can't navigate the middle ground really well in our field. We say, oh, you should run a marathon. Like, how did we go from you need to be in shape to you should run a marathon? How did we go from you should get stronger to grandma deadlifts, right? It's like we just don't negotiate the middle ground well.
Mike, you also said in the forum, somebody asked about med ball. We talked about med balls last episode, but I just wanted you to kind of talk to me about the why here. We've gotten away from the half kneeling and lunge position medicine ball work in favor of more standing progressions. I did that a long time ago I think it was just from a matter of logistics and time and teaching. Why did you guys get away from the half kneeling and lunge position stuff?
I think just the eye test, the shit test, right? You start looking at it and just realizing, wow, people, what I'm trying to get out of this, we're not getting. So, because it started out sort of, Greg Cook, Greg Rose, 4x4 matrix, developmental sequence, all that stuff in terms of, hey, we're going to start in tall kneeling and then we're going to go to half kneeling and then we're going to work our way up to whatever, to a lunge position, blah, 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 and then you end up in a situation where you look and go, ugh, that didn't work out the way I wanted it to at all. So
Yeah. Excellent. Coach, I saw the deck guys are here. They went up the stairs. I saw them behind you. So
yeah.
Thanks for doing this, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Okay. Thanks, yeah. I'll see you.
Bye.